Dies ist der Mautic-Cast. Alles über Open Source Marketing Automation mit Mautic. Und das hier ist dein Gastgeber, Eki Gümbel.
Ja, willkommen in 2022. Hallo da draußen, ihr Lieben, an den Endgeräten, an den Livestreams, an den, wie heißen die Dinge, HomePods oder Siris oder so dieser Welt, ne? Oder,
HomePods.
Ja. Hast du mal schon versucht, Podcast auf dem HomePod oder meinetwegen auf Alexa oder so zu hören?
Nee, ich habe noch nicht mal sowas.
Ja, das ist gut für dich.
Ich hab so ein Handy mit Podcast-App.
Ja, also ich weiß nicht, ich will mal so sagen.
Hallo Eckhard.
Hallo Thomas. Ja, Thomas ist auch hier. Mein Name ist Eckhard Gümbel. Ich wurde schon vorgestellt. Ja. Meine kleine Tochter liebt es auch, unseren HomePod zu bespaßen. Aber wenn ich da Podcast drauf höre, das finden sie gar nicht gut.
Nee, denn du hörst die falsche Podcast.
Na, Podcast ist einfach personal. Das hat nichts auf so einem Topf zu tun. Ne?
Stimmt wohl, wenn man alleine ist.
Ja, genau. Ja. Oder alleine zu zweit. Okay. Okay. Wir sind in Folge 1931. In Folge 31. Ganz so weit sind wir noch nicht. 31. Wir nehmen auf am dem 17. Januar 2022 und ich freue mich heute nicht alleine zu sein, sondern Thomas ist, wie gesagt, schon bei mir wieder.
Hast du aber schön gemacht beim letzten Mal.
Ja?
Ja, finde ich schon.
Strange. So ist schön. Ja. Und wir haben ein lustiges Topic heute im Interview, und zwar aus Südafrika, den Robin Tindall. Habe ich gewinnen können, was zu erzählen über sein Sports-Event, was er da macht, nämlich Surfski-Paddling.
What the fuck?
Ja, nee. Hallo, jetzt sind wir wieder im Index hier. Naja.
Was ist denn Surfski?
Ja, das wird er uns erzählen. Ja.
Exciting.
Sei gespannt, Thomas.
Exciting.
Das ist was für dich, glaube ich.
Ich bin gespannt.
Aber abgesehen davon ist er halt schon Mautic-User der ersten Stunde und bringt uns eine Menge Insights mit. Und ich glaube, das ist ein sehr kurzweiliges Interview, auch wenn es nicht ganz kurz geworden ist. Wir
sind sehr gespannt.
Ja.
Wo wir vorhin von deiner Alleine-Folge gesprochen haben. Du hast noch einen Nachtrag, ne?
Nein, ich habe 2.
Ja.
Ja, ich habe ja mit dem Andy im Interview letztes Mal gesprochen und der hatte sein Schweizer Messer aufgeklappt und hat lustige Dinge erzählt. Und ich habe ein bisschen Feedback bekommen von Leuten, die gesagt haben, okay, ich krieg's nicht so richtig hin. Und siehe da, was er erzählt hat, geht schon alles, aber nicht in jeder Situation. Also dieses Thema Senden zur Zeitzone des Empfängers ist ein Beispiel. Also prinzipiell geht das immer nur, wenn du sagst, senden at a relative time period, nicht zu einer bestimmten Zeit. Wenn ich sage 9 Uhr senden, dann ist es 9 Uhr Serverzeit. Ne?
Ja,
und relative time period, da guckt er dann auf die Zeitzone, warum auch immer das so ist. Und selbst das ist ansonsten auch noch offenbar tricky. Es gibt immer wieder noch im Forum Threads, wo Leute in den Fallen laufen. Also nicht ganz wackelfrei. Und das andere ist das Thema dynamischer Content in E-Mails, eines unserer aller Lieblingstools, ist tatsächlich, wenn ihr MJML-Templates schon verwendet, da noch gar nicht aktiviert. Das ist eine Sache, die kommt jetzt hoffentlich nach. Wir arbeiten hart dran in der Builders-Initiative, dieses Feature endlich hinzukriegen. Es ist auch gar nicht so ein großes Ding, aber es ist schmerzlich vermisst und wenn ihr euch wundert, dass ihr es nicht seht, habt ihr wahrscheinlich ein MJML-Template. Im alten Bilder natürlich oder in HTML-Templates, im neuen Grapes.js-Bilder sieht alles aus, so wie es soll. Also für alle, die gar nicht wissen, wovon wir gerade reden, es geht darum, in einer E-Mail einen bestimmten Schnipsel reinhängen zu können für bestimmte Zielgruppen. Zu sagen, für Deutschsprachige, schreibt bitte, doof in der E-Mail, ne? Sagen wir so, für weibliche Leserinnen schreibt bitte dieses und jenes und für männliche Leserinnen schreibt bitte jenes und jenes und für Default, also für den Rest, schreibt bitte etwas Drittes. Dynamic Content auf alle Fälle richtig gut und hoffentlich auch schnell in MJML jetzt verfügbar.
Okay, dann haben wir die Nachträge ja auch super.
Ja.
Formulare sind eine schöne Sache, Eckhard, oder?
Oh ja, du spielst mir einen Ball nach dem anderen.
Ja, ich weiß. Also bei uns so in den Webprojekten, Typo-3-Projekten ist das jedes Mal ein Thema. Nicht Formulare selber, das ist alles ganz schick, aber wie verhindere ich Formular-Spam? Und wir nutzen da so 1, 2 Technologien, kann ich ja gleich sonst auch noch was drüber erzählen. Aber ich habe jetzt gehört, ihr hattet im Umfeld dann tatsächlich relativ zeitnah, verschiedene Fälle.
Ja, tatsächlich natürlich kein neues Thema. Also traditionell kommt das aus dem Bereich der Foren, wo maschinell einfach zugespammt wird mit irgendwelchen ekligen Links oder sowas und die meisten Foren längst aufgegeben haben. Im Mautic-Forum haben wir halt etwas restriktivere Maßnahmen, um den ersten Post abzusetzen und deswegen haben wir da auch Ruhe mit Foren-Spam. Gut, hier geht es aber um Spam oder Formular-Spam, der in E-Mails mündet. Auch das nicht so richtig neu, aber im Moment, wie du schon sagst, sehr massiv und deswegen wollte ich auch einmal die Warnung wirklich an alle rausgeben, da sorgfältig aufzupassen. Ich habe ungelogen binnen einer Woche 3-mal Kontakt zu diesem Thema im großen Maßstab gehabt.
Bei unterschiedlichen Leuten.
Naja, das erste Mal war tatsächlich am vergangenen Montag in einer deutschsprachigen Usergruppe hier, mautic.de, hatten wir einen Vortrag vom André zum Thema Formular-Spam bekämpfen und haben halt da dann auch lange drüber diskutiert, was man tun sollte, was man kann und so weiter. Und am selben Abend, kein Witz, hat ein Freund von mir erzählt, der in einer anderen Stadt in der Nähe von Hannover arbeitet, dass da ein Vorfall war, das über dasselbe Wochenende hinweg, Freitagabend begonnen, Montagmorgen bemerkt, einfach viele 100.000 E-Mails verschickt wurden, weil weil halt ein Bot ein Formular zugespammt hat. Mhm. Und weitere 3 Tage später, lass mich lügen, am Donnerstag kam dann ein Post vom Alex Hammerschmidt im Mautic-Forum, der sagte, riesengroßes Forum, viele 100.000 Vorkommnis, viele 100.000 E-Mails verschickt und ich zeige euch mal, was ich getan habe, um da jetzt per Honeypot irgendwie dagegen zu steuern.
Ja.
Und das Learning ist, also das ist vielleicht ein bisschen das Outcome eigentlich aus der User Group vor allem, und das, was wir dann auch in der Firma hier hinterher nochmal diskutiert haben, ist vielfältig. Ne? Das eine ist halt, es ist wirklich ein Problem, es ist auch wirklich ernsthaft. Ne? Es ist nicht nur Image-Schaden vielleicht bei den Empfängern, sondern vielleicht schiebt man auch tatsächlich Malware unter. Ne? Von diesen, lass es mal 500.000 Leute sein, die es empfangen und 1 Promille davon klickt nur drauf. Ja. Da habe ich immer noch 5.000 Geschädigte. Ja. Ja, das ist natürlich auch ein Brett für ein Unternehmen.
Blacklisting, Mail-Server.
Absolut, genau. Also Reputation geht nach unten bei Gmail oder den anderen Service-Providern der Welt. Und nicht zuletzt verursacht man natürlich einen ganzen Haufen Arbeit. Im Zweifel habe ich halt auch 500.000 Einträge und Leads im CRM-System. Ja. Wahrscheinlich bricht das noch zusammen. In jedem Fall ist erstmal Alarmstimmung und ganz viel Arbeit. Und man will das nicht so. Das ist, glaube ich, Bottomline dabei. Ja. So, und jetzt ist die Frage, warum, was kann man dagegen tun, natürlich? Und dazu muss man erstmal die Frage stellen, wie funktioniert das eigentlich? Meistens geht es ja um Double Opt-in-E-Mails heutzutage. Ja. Oder sonstige Bestätigungen. Ne? Ich starte irgendwo eine Anfrage und kriege dann vom System irgendeine Antwort. Nicht nur vielen Dank für deine Anfrage, sondern auch, lieber Thomas, vielen Dank für deine Anfrage. Ne? Oder vielen Dank für deine Anfrage. Hier sind nochmal die Daten, die du eingegeben hast oder so. Also in jedem Fall, wo eben eingegebene Daten in dieser E-Mail zurückgeschickt werden, habe ich ein Problem, wenn denn da böse Sachen drin sein können. Ne? Da kann drin stehen, Merkel muss weg oder so, oder da kann der Link drinstehen zu der jüngsten Malware der Woche oder sowas. Ja. Oder beides.
Ihr Kontopasswort ändern.
Phishing ist noch eine schöne Geschichte, ja, absolut, klar. Und das kann man halt auch echt, das ist so banal, dass das kein Wunder ist, dass das genutzt wird, sagen wir mal so. Ja. Gut, so, lange Rede, kurzer Sinn. Was kann man tun, um das zu vermeiden? Personalisierung weglassen. In dem Moment, wo ein Double Opt-in keinerlei User-Eintrag mehr enthält, ist zumindest dieser mit Angriffsvektor noch weg. Ist erstmal weg. Vielleicht habe ich immer noch 500.000 Leads, aber wenigstens nach außen sieht es keiner. Oder sieht nicht hässlich aus nach außen. Und wahrscheinlich ist es auch so wertlos, dass keiner da eine 500.000 Leads drauf losschicken wird. Das andere ist halt dann die Eingaben auch validieren oder aber halt diese Grundidee, ich möchte feststellen, ob es denn ein Mensch ist oder eine Maschine. Ne? Ja. Mensch oder Maschine stelle ich fest, mit Capture traditionell, also Bilderrätsel, klicke alle Ampeln oder aber eine Rechenaufgabe oder tipp mal ab, was hier steht. Das kennt ihr alle, ne? Ja. Genau. Und dann gibt es so Sachen wie Honeypot, so ein verstecktes Feld. Wer ein unsichtbares Feld trotzdem ausfüllt, muss wohl eine Maschine sein. Ja, das funktioniert, also das meiste davon funktioniert halt bei guten Angreifern heutzutage überhaupt nicht mehr. Ne? Es gibt da richtig gute Software, die halt auch Capture crackt und so weiter.
Leider.
Und es gibt noch noch ein, zwei weitere Maßnahmen. Das eine ist halt die Eingaben zu validieren, zu sagen, aha, komisch, warum steht im Namen ein HTTP ne, oder / oder so. Idealerweise nicht nur also JavaScript-seitig, sondern serverseitig, sodass dann wirklich zumindest dieser Dreck rausgefiltert wird und vielleicht auch der ganze Eintrag verworfen wird. Das ist tatsächlich ein Ansatz, den wir noch verfolgen auf Mautic-Seite. Dann gibt es eine Low-Level-Geschichte, dass man ganze Netze vielleicht sperren kann oder so IP-mäßig. Ja, das nur am Rande erwähnt. Und ansonsten halt das Thema Capture einfach besser machen. Da kennst du dich auch ein bisschen aus, Thomas, oder?
Ja, ich kenne halt die Google Recapture-Geschichte ein bisschen und in der aktuellsten, auch nicht mehr aktuell, Version V3 habe ich tatsächlich nicht mehr Bilderrätsel, klicke hier alle Brücken an, sondern dahinter steckt ein Algorithmus, den man sogar tunen kann, für seine Zwecke auch anpassen kann. Sprich, der Benutzer sieht erstmal keine Interaktion und damit wird relativ viel an Spam auch tatsächlich verhindert in der Praxis, was ich so an Feedback mitkriege.
Ich glaube, es funktioniert sehr, sehr gut.
Ja.
Und man muss aber auch sagen, es hat einen riesigen Nachteil. Es ist natürlich überhaupt nicht DSGVO-konform und man will aber auch nicht, dass Leute jetzt, also wenn man jetzt den Weg geht zu sagen, okay, dann hole ich eben Zustimmung ein und jemand stimmt nicht zu, dann kann er bei mir auch kein Formular abschicken.
Ja.
Und dann gibt es auch Leute, die sagen, okay, selbst ein Opt-in heilt das nicht, das ist einfach nicht tragbar und im Moment geht es ja ein bisschen rund, was die ganzen Cloud Act und so weiter Geschichten mit den amerikanischen Anbietern angeht.
Also es ist tatsächlich so, Honeypot ist eine ganz nette Option, auch wenn sie nicht gut genug manchmal funktioniert, weil sie auch den Benutzer wieder nicht stört, ich aber meine Daten weiterhin habe. Und ansonsten aus meiner Praxis heraus ist es eigentlich Recapture und irgendein Tod stirbt man jetzt. Also, ja.
Also man muss auch sagen, es sollte halt angemessen sein. Ne? Will ich den Friseursalon an der Ecke schützen, muss ich es vielleicht nicht so wild treiben. Da ist Honeypot eine super Option. Ne? Und wenn ich eher ein hochwertiges Angriffsziel habe, wo vielleicht so ein Formular-Spam-Angriff auch mal das Geschäft lahmlegen kann oder massiv Reputation kosten kann, dann muss ich halt ein bisschen mehr Aufwand reinstecken.
Ja, und im Zweifel sogar die Abwägung treffen zwischen den Benutzer stören und der Sicherheit, ne?
Ja, also der Marketer in mir sagt natürlich, nein, eine Usability, lass diese blöden Captures weg, macht's vernünftig. Es gibt ja auch noch
also
tatsächlich...
zu Recht, ne?
Ja,
so ist ja nicht.
Ja, also ich glaube, eine gute Kombination. Ne? Also es gibt ja zum Beispiel kommerzielle Systeme, Friendly Capture ist halt im Moment so der Marktführer, glaube ich. Für meine Begriffe auch total gut, kostet halt ein paar Euro. Ne? Recapture ist umsonst und die ganzen Multimillionen-Dollar-Unternehmen nutzen natürlich sehr gerne kostenfreie Software, ne? Google freut sich. Nein, also ich finde, das ist absolut eine valide Option, eine Bezahlsoftware zu nehmen dazu.
Ja.
Und ansonsten eine Kombination, wie gesagt, also eine ziemlich gute Validierung, Mensch-Maschine-Unterscheidung, dann noch eine Eingabevalidierung, dann ist man doch auf alle Fälle sehr gut aufgestellt. Oder wenn man sagt, okay, wir machen nur Honeypot und sonst nichts, sollte man zumindest dafür sorgen, dass man solche Angriffe schnell erkennt. Nanu, gestern hatten wir noch 2 Form-Submissions, heute haben wir 2000, dann soll man
bei
reichen,
uns
ne?
brummt's ja richtig.
Ja, ne? Aber Vorsicht, kann natürlich sein, dass gerade eine Werbekampagne läuft, ne? Radiowerbung geschaltet.
Ja, okay,
und so.
Klar.
Ja, und letztes Puzzle-Bausteinchen hier ist natürlich einen Notfallplan dann auch zu haben, dass ich vielleicht dann nicht in völliger Aufregung das Formular abschalte, weil ich es vorher mit Honeypot betrieben habe, sondern dass ich dann weiß, okay, ich gehe dieses Risiko, aber wenn es losgeht, dann schalte ich dann halt das Recapture dazu und dann jammert mein Marketer, weil die Usability nicht mehr so gut ist, aber wenigstens Ruhe. Ja. So, das dazu. Ich weiß, für viele ist das vielleicht ein bisschen böhmische Dörfer, aber für ganz viele auch gerade heißes Thema und kann natürlich das beste Marketing zunichte machen.
Ja.
Gut. Ganz kurz zu den praktischen Umsetzungen im Mautic. Ich habe schon gesagt, zum Thema Validierung versuchen wir gerade was Schlaues auf die Beine zu stellen. Das Thema Recapture ist nicht neu. Da haben wir in Mautic-Cast Folge 20, genau, schon mal erzählt von dem, was der Konstantin Scheumann da gebaut hat. Dieses Plugin ist inzwischen übernommen, weil er es nicht mehr aktiv maintained und wird primär jetzt vom Steno Kusmani weiterentwickelt. Die V3, also die Unterstützung für Recapture V3, die du gerade gesagt hast, Thomas, die ist ja drin. Mautic 4 ist auch unterstützt. Also es spricht nichts dagegen, Recapture mit Mautic zu verwenden, technisch. DSGVO bitte beachten, bitte klärt es mit eurem Datenschutzbeauftragten, ob ihr das wollt. Ja, speaking of Kusmani, der hat zu Weihnachten mehrere seiner Bezahl-Plugins auf kostenlos umgestellt. Die findet ihr unter GitHub. Vielen, vielen Dank, Steno. Super. Wie immer ein sehr schöner Community-Contributor. Er hat auch ein weiteres neues kostenpflichtiges Plugin veröffentlicht, was ich sehr spannend finde. Und das heißt Form-Tab, also Formular-Tab. Das heißt im Prinzip, ich habe am Kontakt im Mautic habe ich einen neuen Tab. Da kann ich draufgehen und dann seine die Formulareinsendung dieses Kontakts mir anschauen. Und das klingt erstmal ein bisschen komisch, aber wenn ihr im Bereich Bestellformulare oder Support-Requests oder so seid, dann kann man es sich sehr schön anschauen, oder kann man sich sehr schön vorstellen, dass das eine wertvolle Erweiterung ist. Ich glaube, dafür ist das auch gebaut. Und wenn das euch weiterhelfen kann, schaut es euch gerne mal an auf MTC Extendee und der Link, wie alle anderen, auch immer in den Shownotes.
Genau. Was haben wir denn aus dem Bereich Contribution?
Wir haben zwei neue Gesichter. Eine ist aus Brasilien, der Leo Schuler. Keine Ahnung, wie man das auf Portugiesisch ausspricht. Der hat ein Video auf Englisch gemacht. Das heißt Mautic Tracking Site Activities Other Than Page View. Komplizierter Titel. Im Prinzip macht er da sehr viel Voodoo mit Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager und so, da sind wir wieder in der Google-Welt, herzlich willkommen. Und verknüpft das sehr intelligent mit Mautic-Geschichten.
Okay.
Und das ist für jeden, der sich in der Ecke interessiert, auf alle Fälle mal einen Blick wert. Und ich finde es ziemlich spannend. Mal gucken, vielleicht hole ich den Leo auch mal zum Interview, weil ich glaube, das ist schon durchaus schlau gedacht und mal gucken, was da noch so kommt von ihm.
Cool.
Ja. Und das andere, da habe ich leider gar keinen Namen. Das ist ja im Forum das Handle BigNYNO oder keine Ahnung, New York oder was immer. Der hat als First-Time-Contributor, also sein erster Post im Forum war gleich ein sehr langer, und zwar ein Bericht, wie er seine Probleme, die er so hatte mit Cron und so weiter, analysiert hat und was er dabei herausgefunden hat. Und das fand ich einfach mal die Erwähnung wert, dass jemand sich die Mühe macht, nicht nur irgendwas auseinanderzudröseln, sondern es einfach auch zu veröffentlichen. Und ich glaube, man kann das noch ein bisschen in irgendwelche Bug-Reports oder so und auch noch weiterführen, aber ich glaube, auf der anderen Seite für jeden, der ähnliche Probleme hat, gibt es jetzt auf alle Fälle eine Ressource, die man finden kann, und zum anderen auch eine kleine Inspiration, vielleicht auch seine eigene Forschung ruhig mal ins Netz zu stellen und anderen damit weiterzuhelfen. Also auch das, einfach ein kleines Shoutout. Ich finde es toll, dass Leute sowas machen.
Oh, und dann haben wir noch einen alten Bekannten.
Wer könnte das sein? Nein, der Joey Keller. Ich wollte einfach nochmal wiederholen von der letzten Folge, für alle, die es vielleicht verpasst haben. Der hat jetzt auf seiner Webseite eine Sponsormöglichkeit, eine Supporter-Möglichkeit eingeführt, wo man monatlich, keine Ahnung, ich glaube 19 Euro oder Dollar oder so in den Topf werfen kann, einfach als Anerkennung dafür, was er so alles veröffentlicht. Er macht natürlich auch ein bisschen geschützten Content jetzt, das heißt für alle, die da abonniert haben, da macht er noch zusätzlich ein bisschen Content.
So wie Patreon praktisch.
Wie was?
Patreon?
Oh, jetzt müsst ihr Ahnung haben.
Achso, ja, das ist eben, ne, du abonnierst in einer bestimmten Klasse, wenn du Content anbietest und deine Abonnenten kriegen was dafür. Da gibt es halt auch so Stufen, die du selber als Creator definieren kannst.
Nee, keine Stufe, einfach ganz
ja, okay, alles gut.
Wild Content, ne, Wild Garden. Aber er hat auch versprochen, dass er mit seiner normalen öffentlichen Contribution überhaupt nicht nachlassen wird. Also wird genauso viel weiterhin public machen, wie er bisher macht. Und er wird eine ganz normale Stütze der Mautic-Community bleiben.
Super.
Also, ja, Joey, super. Vielen Dank. Und damit kommen wir dann tatsächlich zum angekündigten Interview. Thomas weiß immer noch nicht, was Surfski Paddling ist, aber gleich wird das erfahren. Hier ist der Rob Tindall. Viel Spaß. Yeah, today it is my pleasure to welcome Rob on the show. Robin Tindall from South Africa. Hello and welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Eka. Yeah, privileged to be here. Thank you very much for having me on the Mautic-Cast. And I'm doing well down here on the southern tip of Africa.
Yeah, lovely. Summertime down there. Yeah. We've been in touch for a little bit on and off, I think since first Mautic-Con or something like that, but we never really talked, and I appreciate the chance that we now can actually talk live. And I did learn a lot of interesting things before, and I thought it's a good topic for everybody in the Mautic world, because you are not a heavy developer, but deep inside using Mautic, and so that's what we're going to talk about. Before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about South Africa, maybe about yourself, and what else is there in the background to know?
Yeah. South Africa is a fascinating place. I think we've been in the news quite a bit because we keep discovering these new coronavirus variants in our country, and then we get labeled for it. So I think that's probably what people know South Africa for most recently. I think Omicron, we discovered it, and therefore suddenly it's our virus. That was quite interesting down here. South Africa is a really interesting place to live. It's a lovely mix. Or maybe not always a nice mix, but a lovely mix between first world complexity and abilities, and African third world as well. So it's a very interesting place, and our political climate and unemployment and crime and things like this are something we live with every day. It's all I've ever known. But at the same time, we've got cities like where I live, Cape Town, Johannesburg, which would rival, Paris, New York, and Munich possibly to some extent in some of the stuff that we can get up to here. Cape Town in particular is got a fairly vibrant kind of what's the word, Silicon Valley style community going on in Cape Town, and it's beautiful. And the other great thing about South Africa is our currency is not so great, which is terrible for us if we live here. But if you want to come and visit, wherever you're coming from, your money's going to go a really long way. So definitely a place for you to come and check out.
Yeah, maybe one of the next Mautic-Cons should be in Cape Town, maybe.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And it really is. It's truly a remarkable city. Just traveling down here, but yeah, somewhere we can look at for sure. But I'm actually not from Cape Town. I'm from Durban, which is a smaller, still significant, but a smaller city on the east coast of South Africa. But I ended up in Cape Town, as most people tend to do, because it's the climate's not as hot and sweaty, and it's a more vibrant city, and especially if you're kind of in the tech space, it is the place to be. So, but I've been living in Cape Town now for 15, 16 years. So it's very much my home, and it's an ocean city, and I spend my life on the ocean, which is actually I use Mautic quite a lot with some of my ocean sports. So I think we'll talk more about that in due course.
Oh yeah. I just try to figure out the exact year, but it must be like 25 years that I've been to Cape Town, and I tend to remember that Durban at the time was also a big university, and also a very lovely city, I think close to Kruger Park or something, right?
All right, you've been to South Africa, you've been to Cape Town, fantastic. Yeah, Durban's gorgeous. Durban used to be fantastic. It's taken a bit of a slip, and if any of my Durban friends are listening, I apologize. But Durban, I don't think is what it used to be. But it's gorgeous. It's got a big university there as well. I think Cape Town, the University of Cape Town, is probably more well known. But Durban certainly the gateway into a lot of the game parks, the safaris and so forth in that part of the world. Also a beautiful city, and certainly where I was born and raised. So I've got to give it credit.
Okay. So let's move on from the touristic marketing to you being born and raised and educated. There's some professional life with digital marketing as well. How did that all start for you?
Yeah, so try and compress a really colorful career into a few moments. I'm actually, my university training is actually in the world of sports medicine and rehabilitation and so forth, and that's where I come from. And there's a very famous institute in Cape Town called the Sports Science Institute, linked to University of Cape Town, and I studied there. And but before I'd even qualified, I had already kind of opened a practice and had hired some of the graduates who were ahead of me to work in my practice, and I very quickly realized I was more of an entrepreneur than someone who was into healing people. So that's how I kind of got into marketing. I bought some companies and started some companies, and some were failures and some were successes. But I kind of realized that marketing, for the most part, that my ability to market or not market was kind of what determined the success of those companies. If I could get customers through the door, then we could make money. And yes, the operational stuff and holding stock and paying your bills were all very important, but without customers, nothing would work. So I kind of transitioned from this medical world into entrepreneurship and owned a couple of companies. And sometimes having to bootstrap stuff, I had to do things myself. So hence kind of what is a website? I had to teach myself WordPress, and that's kind of where it rolled. And I think I sold my last company, and that sounds glamorous. It wasn't a significant company, but I sold my last company about 4 years ago and went into the marketing game full time, which is where I am now. I either kind of coach or mentor or instruct in marketing, and I've also got a marketing agency there where we have a done-for-you service where we'll help companies scale their marketing through marketing automation practices.
Okay, so to be clear, that's two companies really. One is Lead Genius, I know.
Yeah, exactly right. I guess I've got leadgenius.biz, which is more the coaching and focused on small businesses and startups. So it's more showing you how to do it and working with you how to do it, because typically when you're in that stage of your career building or your business building, you don't have budget to go and hire people to do things for you. And I know how difficult it is and how hard it is to teach yourself to do stuff, because I've done that. So I've walked those miles, and so my team and I, help you to do the same, but at a much faster rate and without wasting time and energy. But still, you're in control. You're in the driving seat. And then my second agency, which is actually new, it's not even 6 months old, is called redrobin.agency, and that's our done-for-you service. And there we're focusing on companies who are already successful, have already got a sales process, a marketing process that's working, but perhaps it's not automated, it's not scalable. It might be very heavy on sales teams and reps and traditional advertising. We help you transition into a marketing automation space so you can scale your abilities without having to scale your expense at the same time. Yeah. So that's what Red Robin does.
Okay, yeah, interesting approach to have a distinct company for that. But okay, that's what you did in the past, right? Multiple companies. Respect to that. Okay, you already mentioned this water sports fascination of yours. And that includes online activities, but let's talk about the offline part first. So, like, what is that sport? What does it mean for you, etc.?
Yeah, so just to give it some context, I'm using Mautic to actually manage aspects of the sport I'm involved in. But that I'm just sport mad, have been my whole life, and in particular water sports. Growing up on the coast, I've been playing in the ocean since the very, very beginning. So I always joke, if it goes under the water, on the water, through the water, or even over the water, as long as it's not too high up in the sky, I've probably done it and probably competed in it as well. But the flavor of the month right now is a sport called surf ski paddling. And it's essentially racing kayaks, the kind of racing canoes and kayaks you might see at the Olympics, but they're slightly longer, just as skinny, and slightly modified to be more suitable to the ocean. And we're racing those and out at sea, racing each other. And then also the real fun part of it is when the wind's really strong and there's big chop on the ocean and big swells running. We'll go out and do long distance paddles, being pushed by the wind and the swells, and it's quite high speed and quite exciting. And surfing kind of far out to sea on these skinny little boats called downwind paddling.
Like fun.
Yeah, it's really good. And Cape Town is famous for the Cape Doctor, which is a super strong wind that blows. In fact, it's blowing outside now. I hope we don't hear it in the microphone. And so Cape Town's a fantastic place for surf ski paddling. We have really cold water, but you get used to that. So that's the sport, and we have events and races and clubs and all kinds of things wrapped around that, and I'm fairly active in that side of the sport.
Okay, and so it's more than just the sport of the month.
Yeah, for sure. I run, and I've used Mautic. I run a surf ski race in Cape Town, which is, I think, 4 years old now. And we're the biggest single day surf ski race in South Africa. And I haven't checked recently, but we shift between being 2, 3, or 4th biggest surf ski race in the world. It's a fairly small sport, so it's not major numbers to achieve those goals. But to organize a race and an event, it was, really, really a complex event. So, yeah, I pulled Mautic in to help me manage all of that.
Very cool.
So that's been a fascinating journey, trying to figure out how Mautic can help with sport of all things.
Yeah. I have to admit that I never heard of that sport before you told me about it. And so if anybody else is that ignorant, it's called surf as in windsurf and ski as in skiing. And if you look it up, it certainly looks very, very interesting and much more at least fascinating. The drawback is you can only do it in the oceans, right?
Well, interesting enough, surf ski is actually one of the largest growing paddling sports in the world, because the surf ski craft itself is really universal. So you can paddle it on a river, you can paddle on a lake, anywhere that you want. If there's lots of rocks around, it's not built for banging off rocks. It's different boats for that. So you can use it on any body of water, really. But yeah, the sea is where the fun is, because you've got to launch off the beach, you've got to bash out through the surf, which is great fun. And then you ride the wild ocean out behind the surf going, to your destination. Typically, we're going from one point to the other with the wind, and then you've got to come back in through the surf zone, so you've got to ride those waves onto the beach. So there's a lot going on, which makes it a hang of it exhilarating. But at the same time, if that's not your game, you can take it down to an area where it's dead calm water and just put it in and have a gentle paddle around in exactly the same boat. So it's a lot of fun, and you can kind of find your own place within the sport to what suits your level and your interest.
And there I am sitting at my desk. I want to get out. Okay. Good. Now, before we dive into the details of what you did with Mautic and in general for the marketing of the event and in your activities, let me ask a broader question. What is your, or the other way around, would you describe yourself as a Mautic expert? How long have you been using it? How deeply have you been using it, etc.? What's your take on yourself there?
It's a very interesting question. I've been in anticipation of being on your podcast. I've been considering that. I have been involved in Mautic from the very, very beginning. I can't remember exactly what it was. I want in my head it says 2014. I think Mautic only arrived in 2015. So within maybe 6 months of the project starting, I think I've been involved. So certainly from the very beginning. But back then, I was completely ignorant on the ways of the web. I was still learning how to spell the word WordPress, never mind actually build a WordPress site. And I'd come from using Infusionsoft, which I think is now called Keep, and I'd kind of discovered marketing automation as a complete user. No understanding of the technology behind it at all. And that had gone with a company of mine that had disappeared, that had been sold with the company. So I was looking for something else, so taken with how fantastic it was to do marketing automation. I don't even know if it had that name back then, that I was looking for an alternative. And a buddy of mine said, check out Mautic. I don't know how he discovered it. And I looked at it, and there it was. There was marketing automation in Mautic in 2015, but I had absolutely no tech ability whatsoever. So I've grown in my tech ability. I've still got a long way to go with Mautic as it's grown as well. So I don't know if I'm an expert, because my tech skills have had to grow as well, and Mautic still to this day I think requires a fair degree of technical expertise from someone. But I think I've pushed it as hard as I can and tried to make it do things that I wanted to do, and butted my heads against bugs and all kinds of things. So I think just by being around Mautic for so long, I've got to call myself an expert, but definitely from an average Joe user perspective. I'm not an under the hood, let's go play with cron jobs and terminal command prompt stuff. I cut and paste in that space. So yeah, user, maybe an expert, but yeah, still learning, still on a massive learning curve.
But perfect. The expert user is I guess the most important perspective on Mautic. If that doesn't go well, then everything else has been in vain, right? So, yeah, I'm interested on a lot of opinion of yours, but let's move on first about or with a question like what are you doing? What is this? What are the parts of the event? How do you market it all? What are the things that you do with Mautic?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'm going to give a minor punt for my event because I'm sure we've got surf ski paddlers out there who are going to be listening to this. And let me give you some context. I'll be really brief, and then that'll help kind of position what Mautic's doing. So the event we're talking about is called the Freedom Paddle. And the website's freedompaddle.co.za, and it is a surf ski race that happens from the Cape Town waterfront, which is a fairly well-known place in Cape Town. If you come to Cape Town, you'll definitely end up at the waterfront. Mm-hmm. And we race out to an island just off the coast called Robben Island, which is famous for where Nelson Mandela was in prison for many, many years, and our dark history of our country. And we race around that island and back to the start again. It's a 27-kilometer race, and it happens on in South Africa we call them public holidays, and the UK calls them bank holidays. But it's a day the whole holiday goes on the whole country goes on holiday to celebrate something, and they're celebrating Freedom Day, where we kind of transition from the dark days of apartheid into a pure, proper democracy. So we kind of celebrate that day by doing this race, which is around Robben Island, a pivotal part of that whole history of South Africa. And it's become really, really popular, I think, because it happens on Freedom Day and it involves Robben Island, and it's in Cape Town. It's incredibly picturesque. The paddle is 27 Ks, which is challenging, but not so challenging to scare people away. So it's proved really, really popular. And that's where the challenges come in. It's really popular. So our entries are high. The number of questions are high, and I get absolutely slammed with queries and questions and entries and changes and transfers and so forth. So that's where Mautic came in to say, well, this is too much for me now. How can I automate this to a large degree? And that was Mautic. Should we dive into kind of more technically what I'm doing with Mautic, or the flow that I'm running Mautic, running the event with using Mautic?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let me dive in there. Yeah, so I don't think we're doing anything crazy difficult. It's what I think is maybe different is we kind of think of Mautic as a marketing automation tool. So we're always marketing companies and selling products or sending emails, and it's always in this really commercial setting. So I always say to the if you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. And I'm reasonably fluent in Mautic. So whenever I come across a kind of internet problem, I always kind of look to Mautic to try and fix it, because it's one of the tools I know. Mautic and WordPress, between those two tools, I can pretty much do whatever I want to do on the web, whereas I think most other people would be, writing code and configuring servers and doing all kinds of things I don't understand. Yeah. So that's why Mautic came to play with Freedom Paddle. So essentially, I've got a WordPress website. I've got an entry form, and the entry form asks a whole bunch of questions. It's a Mautic entry form. Some of the questions we're asking is, what craft are you using? Because it's not only surf skis. We allow SUP boards, which are stand-up paddle boards, prone boards, which are lie-down prone boards. We have rowing boats to go across. We've got all kinds of different categories. So that's in the form. We've also got different courses. We have the full 27-kilometer course, and we've got 2 shorter courses. So there's quite a lot of segmentation going on within that entry form, with different age groups in different categories of different prize monies and so on. So managing all of that is what starts with the Mautic form, and that just they fill out the Mautic form. It dumps the information into Mautic. Once they hit submit, though, it actually takes them into a standard WooCommerce, and they buy a ticket, essentially pay the entry fee, and that's kind of their job done, nice and simple. But we've now captured all that information into Mautic, and also using a great little plugin. Would love to give credit to the author. I can't remember it offhand now, but there's a great little plugin to WordPress called Wootic. And WOOTIC, which is a nice, very, very light plugin for passing WooCommerce information into Mautic. Really works nicely, and we're able to pass tags into Mautic and mark people as having paid their entry fee or not having paid their entry fee. So that's really nice. So we can track that inside Mautic as well.
That's Maxi Troma, right?
Sorry, Echo?
Wootic is by Maxi Troma.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, fantastic. So shout out to him. It's a really nice little piece of code. And and typical open source Ubuntu spirit, he's put it out there free for all of us to use, which is just one of my favorite things about Mautic and the open source community in general. So yeah, it's really nice of him. We lean on that quite a lot. Then once they're in Mautic, we do some real hyper segmentation. We use tags to tag anything possible, and then using those tags, we divide people into segments. And the entry process for the event is also phased. By phase, I mean there's a time limits to it. If you enter in month 1, it's a slightly cheaper entry fee. If you enter in month 2, it's a slightly more expensive entry fee, and so forth, because we're trying to encourage people to enter early. So that does mean that I've got a lot of segmentation going on in the background to know when someone entered, what course they entered, what discipline, what gender, what age group, when they entered, have they paid for their entry, have they not paid for their entry. And I'm using Mautic to filter all of that information and then email everybody hyper personalized emails to say, thanks for your entry, your payment's overdue, or we're missing this piece of information from you, or well done, you've entered, you're in this segment on this course, rather than just kind of sending a blanket email going, like a newsletter style emails, which I think a lot of sporting events just do. There's a Facebook post or something, and it's one size fits all. Now, we've really broken that down and used dynamic content on the web, and we've used dynamic content in the emails to make the person's experience of the event really, really tailored to them, which has been a challenge. Sometimes you get it wrong and the wrong information gets sent to the wrong person. It's part of the learning curve. But that's what's been really nice, is to make someone feel a sense of almost ownership of the event, and that this event is about them. They're not just the bit player on the day and part of a big field.
Okay,
that's working really well.
Quick question: when you say on the web, you're using dynamic web content?
We are using dynamic web content. If you go to the website right now, it's not, because the website goes through phases. The race on the 27th of April, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be opening entries. And once entries open, then we'll be using dynamic content there. And it's relatively simple dynamic content, although this year I hope to get a bit more complex with it. And we do simple things. Just if someone returns to the page, we greet them by name, assuming that they're allowing that. Welcome back, Tim, if you're back on the page. And then we've got a couple of other kind of technical pages where people can transfer entries between I can't make the race, but I've paid for my entry. I want Eka to take over my entry. I've got a fairly sophisticated Mautic-driven system for transferring entries from one person to the other. And in that space, we also use dynamic content to help them through that, because they've obviously entered. We have all their information. We can do that quite simply.
Okay, got it. Okay. So I assume the big picture is clear. The details are hard to imagine if you've never organized an event like that. I think it's hard to figure the complexity of it all, and what you just described, transferring one booking to another person, is definitely a lot of work if you do it manually. And supporting all that. Wow. Okay. And you're doing all that on your own, or are you with a team?
Yeah, it's principally on my own. One of the reasons it's on my own is I'm stubborn. I want to use Mautic for this. I really enjoy using Mautic for this. And members of my team, maybe I'm doing them a disservice. I apologize to the Freedom Paddle team out there. With the exception of one person, I'm too nervous to introduce them to Mautic, because it's a relatively complex tool. And I also think the way I've set it up, because it's only me, I haven't considered the right way to label things and categorize things so that others can come in. So it is only me. But at the same time, if I one of the challenges for that is it forces me to make sure the automations are really tight, so that it's not overwhelming for one person. Because I think one of my business themes that I like to go for, especially with Red Robin when we're doing marketing automation, is it should be that. It should be marketing automation. It shouldn't need humans to drive it along. A good marketing automation setup, as far as I'm concerned, is completely automated, but it raises a red flag and calls in a human when a human is needed. When someone wants to have a belly-to-belly chat, it calls the human over and says, this is the time now. But until those flags are raised, until we hit to those points, the automation should be able to get on with the job and do do most of it, because then it's faster for me on one side, and then it's faster for in this case, the paddler, but the consumer as well, when they can just interact with the website, get in there, get the result they want, and not have to wait for someone to call them or email them or do something like that. Yep. So it's a bit of a test for me to make sure I'm pulling that off, because it is only me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, I like the fact that you are using beyond email, and you're using a lot of dynamic content in emails, which we talked about in the last episode, dynamic content on the web, and a lot of integration as well. So I think that's a really good example of using Mautic in a more advanced or a really advanced way. And it's nothing wrong with doing it as a single user setup, because in reality, for a nonprofit, that's the only realistic scenario, I guess, unless you put way more work into it. Shall we move on to the experiences you made or the thoughts that you have? Or is there anything else you want to mention? Oh, one thing. I know you have had a podcast on this whole thing as well.
Oh, yeah. I think maybe if we dive into the podcast, Becca, just talking about that, maybe I would want to mention that I'm not using Mautic in isolation. I am using quite a few other tools to pull off what I'm doing. And I think that's one of the magic things of Mautic, is that you are able to it's actually a double-edged sword. It's magic that you can integrate Mautic with so many other things, but it's also, for a non-coder like me, incredibly challenging to do so, because for the most part, there isn't a simple click button and have Mautic talk happily to something else. You've got to start playing with some of the dirty code, I call it, where I don't belong, but I have played in that. But obviously WordPress, I use Google Sheets a lot. I'll push information out of Mautic into Google Sheets using Integromat, although I'm busy starting to play with N8N as well. And, Integromat's a nice little glue that passes information in the middleman. And I'll do a lot of processing of data inside Google Sheets, and then either push it back onto the WordPress site or push it back into Mautic, having been processed to what I want, especially with like the transfer things. I'll use a Google Sheet to look for the email address inside Mautic of the person who's handing over their entry, and a formula to look for the email address of the person who's coming in, and kind of marrying them together to make sure that this isn't a fraudulent transfer. Yeah. And then the Google Sheet's doing that, and then push the result back into Mautic to say, hey, well done, you've entered, that person's out and you're in, and you can now see your name on the website as a confirmed entry. So that's WordPress, Google Sheets, Mautic, and Integromat. Yeah. So that, but what I do want to stress is I'm no coder. I've done this as a relatively non-technical guy, as a user of Mautic. Honestly, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Really, I just need a bit of bloody-minded determination.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like you said, it's the things that you know best, that you use them for everything, even if there's many other ways to solve things.
Yeah, and then Google's your friend.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so Mautic, you mentioned you've been there from the really early days in 2015 when the first beta arrived, I guess, or alpha. I don't know, but 2015 it was, and it has come a long way since then. And we all know it's certainly not perfect yet, and there's a lot of ideas and rough edges still, etc. So your perspective is, I think, good to hear, especially for the developers as well. When you look at Mautic, where it is today, it's probably, hopefully, much better than it was in the beginning, but there's things that you miss or that you dislike or something like that. Do you have any specific area that Mautic should put the most focus on today, or it's just a mix of everything?
Yeah. It's kind of, when you get a puppy, you don't really notice it growing up. It just one day was a puppy, and next day it's a big dog, and you can't you don't really notice that change. Sure. And that's what it's been like with me for Mautic, because I've been involved since the very beginning. It almost still feels the same to me as it was back then, and it definitely isn't. But that's because I'm using it all the time. I'd love to actually have a historical museum. Eka, I know you've got a Mac museum probably sitting behind you right now. I'd love a Mautic museum. Virtual more, and I can go back and and draw comparisons. Yeah, but for sure, Mautic has come a hang of a long way from where it is. I think the biggest feature with how Mautic develops is just the size of the community. I think the core community that's developing and contributing is still really, really small. But the user community is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And back in the day, the forum, I think it did start with a forum. You would have no responses, and I think John Linhart, I think, was really active back then, if I've got the name correct. And one or two other people. It was very, very code heavy and code specific. Nowadays, we're seeing kind of more everyday users asking questions and getting involved and trying to help everyone else. I think the size of the community has really been probably the biggest change. But it's essentially the UI has hardly changed at all. It's almost identical. There are a couple of extra features in there. I mean, this latest now upgrade to version 4, we saw some really nice stuff coming in, more plugins and to change columns and the new email builder and so forth. But things I'd like to see in Mautic, well, I've made some notes here, and I gave up. I think after 27, whatever, how many here, I stopped writing. I thought this is going to sound like a full end-to-end complaint list, which is not the case at all, because Mautic is truly a magnificent piece of software. But let me answer your question in a general term. Where do I think their focus should be? I think from being a user and not a coder, I would love to see Mautic shift from what appears to me as a non-coder to have been quite coder-focused, developer-focused. If you look at the forums and so on, there's lots of talk of GitHub and code this and code that, and put this in here and here. It's very technical it's very daunting for the user who just wants to get in and use a piece of software. And I'd love Mautic to kind of shift out of that growth period where it's been now, the kind of development, kind of extended beta phase, if you want to call it that, to really being focused on the user experience now, to attract more people like me to it. So many people like me rock up and coming from a HubSpot or something else that's kind of mature and ready to go, and just suddenly find themselves having to play with cron jobs and setting up Amazon SES and all this kind of stuff that gets really complex really fast. And I think they end up going back to their proprietary tools. And I'd like to see Mautic kind of really rise up and be a real player in that space to that type of community, the users, and steer away from having to be reasonably technical in order to get Mautic to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, you just mentioned the forums, which are still, or more than in the past, we try to make that the focal point of support, and I'm really wondering whether we should make a difference there, not say, okay, here there's so many forum categories, but this is for support, and everything goes into that, from developer issues or bugs or set up cron jobs and but also set up the best campaign, etc. And in our agency, we always differentiate between the user, the integrator, and the developer. The integrator would be the one to set up a cron job or configure an API or something, and the user would really be the one to set up dynamic web content or email campaigns or double opt-ins or whatever. I'm sure we need all of those, because there will be people who set up Mautic, and there will be people who have multiple roles, but maybe it's easier if you're just a user to live in a forum category that is just for users. I'm not sure that helps, but given that we have the sort of questions, the sort of supports, the interactive support anyway, that we have, that's not going to change immediately. We can just give it a better structure, and we can support that by non-interactive things like documentation, etc. That's just my 2 pence there, but yeah,
I agree completely. I think one thing that I would love to see a section on the forum is marketing advice and marketing guidance, and how Mautic has a role in that ecosystem. Would be lovely. And for example, if I would love, and I'm busy kind of putting something together at the moment, but I would love to have a forum. Actually, maybe it starts with a blog or a tutorial from somebody, and who on how to, best practices for marketing your e-commerce website. And you start broad out like with that challenge, and now that's going to attract someone who has either been employed to market an e-commerce site or is trying to market their e-commerce site, and they go like, okay, what are best practices here? So that's almost not software specific, but starts at that point and then zooms down into how to tag people, how to pull them into an automation, what campaigns you should have, and then in Mautic, what does that campaign look like in Mautic? These are the steps to pulling it together: reactivation campaigns, engagement campaigns, that kind of marketing 101. But linked to Mautic. And if I look at things like ClickFunnels, for example, or HubSpot, obviously these are for-profit companies. They have resources that Mautic doesn't have. But they're selling their tools, and they're getting people to use their software, but providing those services to people. And I certainly see that, for example, in HubSpot. And then I go, well, how can I do that in Mautic? And it'd be lovely to have a forum and a community that helps to transition that theoretical knowledge into a practical implementation inside of Mautic for the user, for the marketer, or for the the DIY marketer who's just marketing their own business. I think that would be a phenomenal asset to the forum.
Interesting approach, because HubSpot, of course, they go all the way from the really general marketing concepts down into their tool, and there are things in the middle, and Mautic should move up a little bit in that direction at least, and say, okay, if you come from the really general things that you maybe learned from HubSpot, how does that translate into the Mautic world? That would be beyond what we have today. But the other thing is still interactive support in a forum is a different thing than documentation, tutorials, guidance. And both are not so easy. I know that the education team tries hard to create content or to collect content from others and all that, and to give it structure and to make it available. Okay. Let's move on. You can talk about
exactly. We got to give credit to those guys, and it'd be nice to have an eye on the prize, and that kind of pulls us towards that direction. And of course, we don't have to Rome wasn't built in a day. We have those small things, but for example, here is and this would be great. I know there's a marketplace coming in Mautic right now. We're under kind of just testing of that. I'm not sure how that's going to roll out, but we want wonderful. And here's a non-techie person asking for something that the tech guys are going to go, well, that's really hard to do, easy to say, hard to do. But wouldn't it be amazing if I'd built a beautiful e-commerce Mautic campaign process, emails, the segmentation, the whole lot, and I could export that and sell it or give it away, and someone can import it and just start modifying it, and they've now got an end-to-end e-commerce solution driven by Mautic. That would be, I think, a game changer.
Yeah, we all want that. One thing is to have a marketplace, maybe even for money, but the other thing is just to deliver some boilerplate campaigns with Mautic to make it much easier start for people. And yes, we
dummy content, that's that kind of thing, dummy content, as you say, boilerplate. So that would be fantastic. And I think maybe that's where Mautic's got to go, and have that kind of focus on getting started quickly, and not just technically getting started quickly, kind of use case getting started quickly as well.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay. Anything else that you have on your list there?
Yeah, I tell you what, right at the bottom of my list here, and Echo, I know you're looking at the list as well. We shared this ahead of time.
Don't tell.
We'll go peek behind the curtain there, chaps. I think, and this, I'm not sure where when Mautic first started as a project, I know CRM functionality was not what Mautic was all about. I think it was quite clear, I think in the early days of Mautic, that we would integrate with CRM packages, and Mautic would not be a CRM. Coming from Infusionsoft back then, which had CRM and marketing automation welded together, that didn't really make sense to me, because I actually don't see how the two can be easily separated. They are so integrated to know where a customer is in their journey pipeline, to be able to pull up customer information, to be able to assign tasks to different users within your organization. So I'd love to see even just basic CRM kind of type functionality, not fully fledged CRM, but I would love Mautic to kind of start to bring in some CRM functionality. I mean, I know there's stages instances within Mautic. I haven't played with it already very much, so maybe that can be used, but kind of more integrated to know I've got a deal, it's at this particular stage, and be able to pop a message to another user to say, please won't you do XYZ, all within that platform, not having to leave that platform and go over to a Salesforce or a Pipedrive or something like that. I think that'd be something I'd find really useful. And in my talking to the community, I know there's quite a few people asking for that as well.
Okay. Well, one thing for me that I always find is that the contact view, there's a lot of room for improvement, certainly, starting from filters and all sort of things that you could do in this view, like bulk edit and things like that, that are really missing and that are still in this area of marketing automation, because CRM to me is more on the sales side, and it is a really, really huge and endless thing, and also the hell. So I'm shy of doing CRM really, but okay, understood, and I know there's a demand for that, but wow, okay, but maybe not this year.
No, I know. I mean, listening to Ruth and talk, I know there's a lot of challenges with Mautic going forward with things I don't understand, basic frameworks that it's based on, and so forth. So I think the small team who's making Mautic work for us has their plates very full. So this is a wish list of things. Okay, one thing I would really like to see either some in-depth training on from those that understand, or a redesign of is the reporting module within Mautic. I don't find it. I've really tried hard to master that, and I struggle, and it just doesn't seem intuitive at all. And I think that's if there's a major weak point within Mautic, I think it's probably the reporting functionality. As I say, either in training us how to use it properly, and that's actually fine. We just don't know how to use it. As I say, the problem lies between the keyboard and the chair, or is it the actual how the reporting module and the logic that pulls it together needs to be relooked at?
Yeah, I wonder that, or I'm stunned that it's rarely mentioned at all, because nobody's using it or is really using it, and most people think, it must be me. But I completely agree with you. It's really hard to understand, and also lacking a lot of things. Yeah, I'm with you.
I went into one of my Mautic instances, and I looked the other day. I had 78 segments, which I think is a crazy number of segments for the small little thing it was doing. And I realized the reason I had so many segments is I was using segment filters to replace the job of the reporting module, which is just the wrong way around. So I think you're right. People aren't moaning about the reporting module just simply because we're not using it. And maybe people feel silly that they should know how to use it, and therefore they're not posting about it. But here I am saying, hey, maybe I'm too dumb to use it. Please help me. If there's anyone out there and who's listening right now, and you can give me some training on how to use the reporting module. Beers are on me.
Yeah.
Echo, what for someone who's a user like me, and I'm self-hosting, and I think, as I say to everyone, I've got no business self-hosting, because I'm blindly following recipes, tutorials that I discover on YouTube, and I'm going way back to 2015, where I didn't really know how websites worked, or what's the difference between domains and hosting and all those good things way back then, and I've been self-hosting since that point. And really, I was just blindly following what someone would tell me to do, and if something went wrong, I would be none the wiser of how to fix that. And every now and again, I kind of discover that on the forum as well, people doing the same thing as I did, and to some extent, I'm still there. So I think what would be really nice is to have a Mautic recommended ideal environment for self-hosting Mautic. I'm not talking about limiting how you can host it, but a recommendation, reference points for maybe a small Mautic installation. For example, I know Mautic can run on a shared host. And the moment I say shared hosting, all the developers out there say, no, never. It needs its own dedicated place. However, I've been able to run it quite successfully on a shared host as long as it was very, very small. Yeah. And for a small one person, one website, doesn't get much traffic, that works. Yeah. maybe a medium and a large, or maybe not large, because large would be highly technical. But if there's a recommended Mautic recipe for server size and speed and softwares that go along with it, then support, I think, would be a lot simpler. You know, one of the support team or just someone on the forum could say, you know, have you installed it as per the Mautic recommendations for a small setup? And if you go yes, then they can make some assumptions on your server setup, and the support could maybe be a little bit more intuitive than trying to figure out exactly your server environment and setup and so forth. Again, this is a non-techie guy asking for tech stuff, so maybe this is not possible. But for me, I think that would make things a lot smoother with people's experience and limit their frustrations with Mautic.
Yeah. Well, I see your point, and maybe such sort of a minimum reference environment would be helpful. The other thing is that there are other ways, like pre-packaged installations where you don't have to fiddle with cron jobs, etc., which may be much better for other type of people. So yeah, but maybe.
That's fascinating. That prepackaged thing that I could put onto a self-host, it could be cloud hosted, but if I want to self-host, but I'm kind of sent this zip, if you will, for lack of a better word, and with instructions on how to deploy that onto my shared server or my virtual server, whatever it might be, and it just unravels itself, and I've got a kind of good to go Mautic, and maybe with some of that boilerplate functionality and campaigns and good things already bundled in there. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I know that's a big deal. That there's a million ways of installing Mautic and hosting Mautic, and you always have to figure out where the issues are in case of troubleshooting from scratch. Okay, so that's hosting. Anything else you want to bring up?
I think I hesitate to bring this up because a lot of work has gone into this, and I know Mautic's pretty proud of it as well. And I'm talking about the email builder, the dynamic content builder, landing page builder. It's all the same. There's this I think the grape.js. I haven't really played with it. I did play with the beta version, and now I haven't played too much with it. It's a great jump up from what we had. Again, as an ignorant, simple user, I'm familiar with tools like Thrive Architect, with like Elementor, these kind of drag and drop builders, and I'm sure having a drag and drop builder of that caliber is an immense time investment, perhaps financial investment, I don't know. But if you compare those builders to what we have in Mautic at the moment, it feels like Mautic's kind of not there yet. And I see a lot of frustrations again in the forum, and I have trying to get mails that look just like they want, and there's code pops up and you've got to edit codes and play with semicolons and open script tags and things, and then also dropping pictures in. Also, if I look at things like MailChimp and MailerLite, I don't use those programs a lot, but every now and again I'll dabble in them. Those builders are pretty powerful and very, very easy to use and to produce great things. And I just feel Mautic we're getting in that direction for sure. But given that Mautic is primarily a device to send emails, the email builder, to be simple to use builder, would be something I would love to improve on.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good.
I think if I can, the bottom line I'm driving at here, if we can start kind of limiting the need for non-techie people to get under the hood, so to speak, and to get Mautic to work properly, and have it more focused on results. People are using the software not because it's cool. They're using Mautic because they want to sell more stuff. Invariably, that's what it is. They want to market, they want more leads coming in, and they want to hand that over to sales or close more deals themselves. That's Mautic's real job out there. And the less time someone has to spend fiddling around with, on cPanels and servers and so forth, and the more time they can actually spend getting that result of more leads through the door through Mautic, I think the better. And I'd love to see Mautic kind of, start shifting focus in that direction to help people achieve that goal. I think that's going to take Mautic from where it is now, and we're going to start not rivaling WordPress because we're completely different, but we'll become what WordPress is to web building, Mautic will become to marketing automation. That's what I'd like to see it go.
Well, yeah, in a way we are that already, even if not that ease of use, but yeah, and certainly not that range. So if I get that correctly, this is about ease of use on the one hand, but also about guidance on the other hand. Is that fair description?
I think so. I think if I had to put that in priority order, I'd say ease of use first. Like I'd love to see a button that you just click a button inside Mautic and it fires your cron jobs for you, so you don't have to wait for cron jobs to fire, or go into your cPanel and figure out how to fire them automatically, or do it some other way through a command prompt. That would be lovely. So there's an ease of use side of it, or be able to actually maybe change your cron jobs within Mautic. So ease of use that way, but then translating that into practical, how do I get more leads? Would be the secondary function.
Yeah. By the way, there's a plugin for that.
Yes, and I'd love to see that kind of, because it's so critical to how Mautic runs. Why is it a plugin? Why is it not just a standard bundled core feature?
That really, you mentioned a couple of times that the teams are tiny, and especially the development team is tiny, and obviously it's not they, it is us. So all the developers are community. There's a little bit of support from Acquia, who pays people, who's paying people, but so are we. For instance, we are paying people, or we were giving employees time to contribute to Mautic, and that's the way open source works. So the big thing that we are struggling, or that we have been struggling for a while now, is to make it easier to contribute and to understand what the ways for contribution. For instance, all this input that you've been giving in the last 45 minutes, or a lot of that it should turn into changes or into things that are done in Mautic, and all that means somebody has to spend time and do things, be it write specification or do some coding or test what have been coded and then comment on that, or document that, or talk about it in marketing for Mautic. Probably it's not like nobody out there is willing to do that, but giving people starting points and transparency on all that is the biggest challenge in my mind. So if we could just leverage all the potential that we have in terms of community and contribution, that would be crucial. And I would be interested to hear. I mean, I know you're not completely remote from the Mautic community. You've attended Mautic conference and all that. But do you feel well informed? If you wanted to contribute more, would you know what to do, or would you know where to look, or where are you?
Yeah, I mean, since Mauticon, and anyone who didn't attend Mauticon last year, the virtual Mauticon, really attended next year. I learned so much. It was fantastic. So definitely attend that. But one of the inspirations that I came away with from attending that Mauticon is it definitely transitioned me from being a kind of passive user and sitting in the sidelines to some extent with Mautic, and my only posts into the forum were for my questions, to committing myself to trying to be a contributor. And the first thing I did, and I've dropped the ball a little bit, but I'm trying to pick it up again, is just be more present in the forums and answer questions where I can. Now, a lot of those questions are fairly technical in nature, which I just don't feel skilled enough to answer those questions. But where there's a question on a campaign or a use case of Mautic, I really try and chip in, or if I've managed to solve a problem in the past, I'll chip in there as well. So I think Ruth has put it out yesterday. There is a leaderboard of who's most active on the forums, and I think I've managed to make it onto that list. I think she releases it each month, I think twice. So it's a little kind of test case for me if I'm contributing enough, if I'm on that list. And I missed that list this last month, so I need to pick up. But to answer your question, Eka, no, I could probably dig in there. I know Ruth's been pretty active with saying how you can contribute if you're not a coder. So it's probably there if I go looking for it, but I think it would be great to have a real kind of spoon-fed, because people are inherently lazy, spoon-fed instructions and ways that those of us who don't code, who aren't technical, can contribute to this and really make it easy for us to contribute. I think that would be, I would be far more involved if that was the case. And if Ruth's listening to this, she's probably already saying right now, but it is easy. I'm saying, let's even make it easier. And in practice, maybe that's a contribution I can offer, is to figure out how to make it easier. If it's easy for me to do, then it's going to be easy for others. But I have a question for you. How can someone like me contribute more to the Mautic project?
Oh man. I would first say, okay, there's two layers. One is the local layer, and one is the global layer. So if you are willing to contribute to the actual project, to the code base, to the documentation, you're automatically on the global layer. But it's also very important, very valuable to have the local Mautic communities, to help people in your own region, in your own culture, to network with them, and to spread the word on Mautic jointly, etc., rather than just as a single company or a single person trying to do an isolated job there. So for many, the starting point of contribution is just being part of the local Mautic community, attending meetups, online meetups, helping out people or whatever. And in some non-English regions, it's probably even more important than it is in South Africa. So we have a strong community in Brazil, in Japan, in Germany, in Spain, other places. That's one thing. And if you want to be active there, there's a lot of potential in either starting or organizing an own community, a local community, if it does not exist, or in enhancing that. On the global layer, there's, as I said, there's many things to be done, and that is a little bit reflected in the teams that we have, in the product team, in the marketing team, in the education team, and in the community team, and a little bit in finance and legal. That's the fifth team that we have. The product team is not just about coding; it is also about doing the right product strategy and all, and it also connects into documenting the product and documenting for developers, etc. properly. Education team is more on organizing the documentation and supporting the forums and all those other things, and having a knowledge base of tutorials, etc. To help people get started and going in that direction that you mentioned earlier, to educate people on higher levels, not just in here's how this feature, how this button works, or how this code line can be changed and all that. So if you want to contribute to that sort of things, one way is, of course, to join a team, and that doesn't mean you have to subscribe to a contract or something, but you can read along in the Slack channels. Slack is really the core channel here. You can sneak into meetings and just listen in and things like that, or you can always get in touch with individuals like team lead or with Ruth or myself or whatever, and ask them, hey, I'd like to do a little bit in this thing, I don't know where to get started, and find out what's the best place for you on a personal level. That's frequently a good way to go. The other thing would be to come from a functional level and say, I really care about this email builder thing, and then there's of course the initiatives, the builder initiative, for instance, and or much discussed but not really up to speed Tiger teams, which would be even more specific, where you have Tiger teams for certain functionalities like here's a target team for reporting, for instance. And then you can say, okay, I want to care about nothing but reporting. I'm not even a developer, but I want to make I want to bring Mautic reporting to a whole new level, and keep improving on a continuous level. That would be the other way to go. So it's pretty widespread, and in hearing this talking, you once again see the complexity in open source. It's not a top-down hierarchical for-profit organization, but it's really people do what they care about most for whatever, or what they consider most fun for themselves, and we need to work on structuring all that on a continuous level. So I guess you're more confused than you were before, but this bottom line is do things locally for sure, and if you want to do things globally, you can always look at contribute.mautic.org to read about all these things, or you can easily get in touch with people like Ruth and get starting points there.
Thanks, Eka. Actually, while you were doing that, I jumped onto forum.mautic.org and scroll down. Normally if you look at that page, you just kind of look at the right-hand side of the page, the latest posts, and you dive right in there. But reading down the left where all the categories are, you do have the community tab, which I think is kind of, I'm not clicking into it now, but this is the home of all things associated with Mautic. You'll find subcategories for each team, etc., etc. Maybe, I'm just noticing that now for the first time. You just have this, screen blindness sometimes where you just look for what you're after. Mm-hmm. And maybe a suggestion is seeing as open source is all about community, bringing that community section of the forum kind of more prominent and encouraging people by just making it more obvious on the page of how they can get involved. It looks like everything's there. I'm wearing my marketing hat right now and going, how can we improve and encourage? Because essentially, if we're looking for more community members within Mautic, it really is a marketing expert. We need to make people consider it. We need to make people, interrupt them. We want them to get involved, sign up, So we basically are taking people from awareness to leads to action, which would be the sale. So we can apply our marketing techniques, which most of us in Mautic are, to pulling this through and building this community. Because I do, as you said, I do feel more confused, and there's Slack channels, but what would I do after this podcast? What would I click on first to contribute? Or what's my first step? And maybe the first step is visiting this community section of the forum.
And there you go. I think it's not a perfect place, because we have this split between Slack and the forum, and Slack is by definition the thing for the short-term conversations, and it's way more active than in the forums. So you have things in two places, if in some cases. And so what I can say is welcome to the community team, which is in charge to organize this onboarding and the structure, all the structures that I mentioned, and to make it much more accessible, to lower the barriers. So that's again a task.
I think I've just written myself a job description. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. Okay. And one thing I want to mention too is that you're not talking purely theoretical, and you've been active on the forums, but there's also a really nice tutorial of yours that is pretty well known, I guess, about setting up the API connection from Thrive Leads into Mautic, and I'll link to that YouTube video. I figure that has been some hard work to create all that, and it is, well, people have a lot of respect or are afraid of undertaking such a thing. So it doesn't always have to be like that. Much smaller things are also appreciated, but for this thing, that's a really lovely example. So yeah, thanks for that one.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and it was actually linking that tutorial's about connecting a third-party form builder. In this case, it was Thrive Leads, but I think most third-party form builders would work. Connecting it with Mautic without using API, and also the kicker here was firing the Mautic pixel, the Mautic cookie, because most of the integrations don't allow for that. So the anonymous IP kind of related tracking history is not assigned to the now known contact. So that was a challenge for me, that I found most of these kind of webhook driven ways of connecting didn't work. So that was something there. But I quite enjoy doing those tutorial videos. So one way I'd like to contribute, if someone is out there who isn't comfortable putting a tutorial video together, but is happy to teach me what they've got, I will, with credit to them, actually pull the tutorial videos together, and because I'm learning a skill. And then through those tutorial videos, I can share that with the community as well. So if anyone's listening who feels a bit shy about getting behind the camera and filming something, let's team up and put that into a knowledge pool for the community to use.
Wow, there we go. Excellent. Okay, I think that's something we couldn't have a better end than that. Is there anything else you want to plug or bring up?
No. Well, actually, two things. I do want to say a thank you to Joey Keller. He has broad shoulders, and a lot of Mautic leans on him, especially in the support world. And I'm sure there are others as well that fill that role. And also on a personal note, Mike from Surge Media has also been incredibly helpful with me of late with my Mautic journey. And I want to end up with a big thank you. I think a fair chunk of what we've been talking about today has been asking for things that we feel are missing in Mautic. But I want to highlight and say a huge thanks to everybody in the Mautic project for building what is an incredible tool. And what I'm seeing guys like Joey and Mike do with Mautic and what they're delivering based off the hard work of other people is quite phenomenal. So a massive thank you that we have this tool called Mautic, and thank you to the development team and those with the vision that have made this happen. From a user, it is an amazing tool, and massive gratitude. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I want to thank you for your time and for all the insights and the open statements. And I am looking forward to hear more from you, and then maybe see you somewhere in some team in some place or whatever. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Take care.
At Mauticon in Cape Town one year, maybe.
Yeah. Flights are very booked to Cape Town, as I recall. So we need early plans. But I'd love to.
Yeah, we'll have the early plans. Yeah. Absolutely. It's been a privilege to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for the invite, and I wish you all the best through the German winter.
Don't mention it. Okay. Yeah. Same to you. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Ja, ich weiß jetzt, was Surfski ist. Wie geil ist das denn? Also das klingt echt mega.
Ja.
Oh Mann.
Ja.
Interessant fand ich aber auch, dass es dann ja doch um viel, viel mehr ging als jetzt das Thema Events.
Oh ja, definitiv. Klar. Also wie gesagt, lang, aber ich glaube ziemlich ergiebig und nicht langweilig. Gut. Lass uns noch kurz in die Community-Ecke schauen, was es so gab. Es gab zum einen ein neues quartalsweises Roundup von News, von Root. Wie immer ein Blick wert, wie immer der Link, ihr wisst schon wo. Dann kommt ja die nächste Ausgabe der Mautic-Konferenz Global um die Ecke, und eine Plattform dafür oder eine Basis dafür ist, dass die Plattform sich geändert hat. Wir nutzen jetzt auch AirMeet, also den Marktführer in diesem Bereich Event-Online-Plattform, AirMeet, und freuen uns total, weil nämlich auch dieses AirMeet dann auch für die normalen Online-Meetups, wie zum Beispiel das deutsche Meetup, verwendet werden kann. An der Stelle vielleicht gleich ein bisschen Werbung. Am 7.2. gibt es wieder das deutschsprachige Meetup, mauticamp.de, findet ihr im Moment noch die kleine Platzhalter-Webseite dafür. Im Prinzip einmal im Monat sprechen wir über aktuelle Dinge, irgendwas wird vorgestellt, Problemchen werden mitgebracht. Immer total nett dabei zu sein. Am 7.2. übrigens über Metabase, das wird der Stefan Lucko da vorstellen. Also ein bisschen Mautic-Analyse mit einem externen Tool. Sehr, sehr cool. Und vielleicht noch ein zweites Meetup nochmal angeteasert, haben wir auch schon mal gesagt, und zwar das Mautic Helpdesk Meetup von Joey und von, wer ist es noch? Uiuiui, jetzt stehe ich auf dem Schlauch. Egal, lest es nach. Mautic Helpdesk, das Meetup. Geht dahin, bringt eure Probleme mit. Diskutiert auch gerne mit Lösungen, oder hört einfach zu, was andere für Probleme haben und für Lösungen zugespielt bekommen. Mhm. Und dann zum Abschluss sei vielleicht noch tatsächlich ein letztes Mal erwähnt, die Mautic-Con ist am 8. 9. Juni diesen Jahres. Das ist die Online-Variante, die Global. Mhm. Und das Call für Speakers dafür ist jetzt auf. Das heißt, ihr könnt jetzt eure Vorträge einreichen. Wir wollen auf alle Fälle auch gerne wieder einen deutschen Track haben. Also bitte zögert nicht lange, überlegt euch ein schönes Thema und registriert euch auf dem Link, der auch wie immer in der Shownote zu finden ist, als Speaker für die Mautic Conference Global im deutschen Track. Ja, so viel für heute. Hast du noch wichtige Dinge, die ich vergessen habe?
Nee, glaube nicht.
Gut. Dann freuen wir uns wie immer über Feedback. Ganz besonders freue ich mich über Speaker-Anmeldung für die Mautic Conference. Und ganz, ganz besonders freue ich mich über, was wir heute haben? Schokolade?
Was? Ja, wir nehmen Schokolade. Sehr gut.
Nein, wir freuen uns darüber, dass ihr bis zum Ende zugehört habt und bis zum nächsten Mal.
Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüssi. Tschüss.